Hello, everyone. Thank you for sliding into our DMs. My name is Dan,
And my name is Montana.
and we are grateful for you to be a part of our podcast. In the previous episode, we talked about our grief experience and working towards our processing in throughout part one. A lot of the different ways that we balance it, the difficulties of it, the different stages of grief. And now, for this episode, we really want to start the conversation by talking about the different resources that we didn't realize were there while we were originally starting to go through this process. So I'm gonna kick it off to you and start it by saying, uh, what were some resources, whether it's a person or non-person, that you didn't realize were there, and if you had known earlier, could have helped you immensely in your journey?
Yeah, I would say people with similar experiences or people in this community. I did not get into advocating until later on. And with that, just starting the conversation, there has been a lot of people I've talked to, like regarding my disability as well as what they are going through. And I feel like that has just been such a healing process with the grief, because even though we all have different uh, chronic illnesses and different experiences, we are part of one community of having a rare disease or just being not able-bodied. So utilizing that, I feel like has helped a lot, because other people understand like what you're going through, as well as it's helpful to pick their brain if they do have something similar to you, or if something completely different, of what has worked well for them with their where they're at with flares as well as medications. I know this one girl, she has the same arthritis as me, and we're friends on Instagram. So there's been a few times where I would DM her and just be like, hey, like, this is kind of what's going on with me. I know last time we talked, this is what you experienced. I would just want to pick your brain to see where I can go from here. And I feel like that gets a whole different perspective. And it also gives me tools and knowledge to use for my specialist appointments and more research that I can do to help support myself as well as like others in this community. So if anyone ever has a question for me, like I'm more than open for them to like message me. And if I don't know the answer, I'll definitely send a resource. So I'll definitely say being more involved in this community. I know I need to work on it a little bit more, because I can get kind of cyclone to my life and everything that else is going on. But the moments I've had with advocating and meeting people, it was a breath of fresh air to know I'm not the only one that's going through this.
Yeah. I think it's one of those things. I will always pound the table saying that my favorite thing about this community is that regardless of the disability that we have, we're all able to get each other and understand some of the difficulties and the pains and the struggles that we go through. And it's almost like we're
Mhm.
sharing kind of war stories, and that we don't need to justify anything. We don't need to explain why our disability is painful, but we
Mhm.
get it and we understand each other and we're able to provide resources that can work for us. And one of the best communities, the rare disease community and disability community as a whole, that I stumbled upon, is shortly after last Rare Disease Week, we a couple of the other young adult people created a Discord server, and it's now grown to a really amazing community, and we're all able to share resources with each other or pick each other up if we had a bad day, whether it was something that happened at work or with our flare up or anything. And that's been such a great tool that I wish was something that I was able to have back in 2020 or back in 2017 when I was first starting to come out about all these things. And some other things that I didn't realize would be so helpful was just really learning more about myself. Um, Being able to kind of work on, these are things, this is types of things that I react to, why I feel this certain way about my disability. These are the things that really built up over time, and these tics that I've developed, or these types of mannerisms, or these types of reactions that I immediately go to. And really starting to ask other people if like these are things that they've noticed, or these are things that they think uh are actually harmful or that have hurt them potentially. Um, it's really allowed me to really be introspective. And I think that's been one of the greatest tools that I have been, excuse me, I have been able to really um utilize. And I wish I had a better sense of myself and introspection earlier as well.
Yeah, with understanding yourself and that introspection, what made you decide to go down that path? I know you mentioned in the previous episode that there was a point that you were just done being angry and resentful. Was that what made you start going down that path of understanding yourself better and figuring out what makes you tick? Or was there something else that made you want to do more of a deep dive on what's going on with you and how to learn more about yourself so you can help yourself later on and you have that support?
Yeah, I think I when I was starting to go through this process, when I was just tired of it, I needed to find like the common denominator. What was this thing, this deep rooted anger that I have? And it wasn't someone else, it wasn't some entity that I felt like that was just, it was too easy to just excuse all of these things on a person or a thing. And,
Mhm.
at the time, like I really, it kind of comes into that grief process and that acceptance that, to quote Taylor Swift, I'm the
Mhm.
problem. I need to fix it. I need to be able to realize that some of the things that I'm doing for myself are harmful and that I have these somewhat self-destructive tendencies and ways that I self-sabotage. And I need to be able to give myself discipline and put hold myself accountable uh for this process and to be able to accept these things that are happening to
Wow, that is a lot of inner work and discipline to look at yourself in the mirror and be like, okay, what's happening, what is the underlying cause, and then of course quoting Taylor Swift, we love her, for
me.
being the problem. Yeah, that's amazing that you did that inner self work and figuring what works best for you. I know with a few of my friends who are currently dating or trying to find a significant other or just that process in general, whenever they talk about like what worked for you, what worked for you, I always said is dating myself. That's what worked for me before I found the person I'm with now. And they're like, wait, what do you mean? I'm like finding out my values and what are my non-negotiables and what I want out of life. Because no one else can tell me that. I can only know that. And so having those standards and knowing myself helped me figure out what I want out of life and where I want to go. And I feel like that's what you've used with moving forward in your life. So now I'm curious on how I can do that inner work again, but instead of the dating aspect of things, the grievance of everything that I've been going through, of taking a look at what's happening, why is this, and what's been working well, what has been working, and then try and find a new next step or goal for myself to have that support along the way because I'm a very goal oriented and like task driven to do list person. So I like what you said about all this. It kind of gives me an agenda item for later on.
Think when it's funny with both disability and dating, there's a lot of people that settle and they're okay. Like, it's
Mhm.
they never allow themselves to heal, they never allow themselves to realize their own worth, or they never allow the people around them to have the happiness that all of them also deserve as well. And I think it's one of those things where that's not healing, that's not acceptance, that's a different way of being
Settling.
sad or angry. Uh,
Yeah.
and settling and acceptance are not the same thing either. Uh, I feel like acceptance really frees you, whereas settling it really kind of imprisons you in this cell where you're just stuck with all of these different resentments and these what ifs. And I'd rather live in this world of, like, oh wells, I tried these things, or I may not be able to do this thing, but I'm okay. And I'm still living the life that I'm proud of, and I want to enjoy the time that I have on this earth.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's very important to notice the difference of settling as well as accepting, because they are completely two different things. And what I do for work, I am a student life coach, basically with college learners. So I really love my job and love the work because what we always talk about is you can't coach unless you are dealing with what's going on with yourself. You have to do inner work to be okay to coach. And with that, it makes me think of different ways to heal and process and also take that step back of being like, am I really where I need to be for my learners if I'm not in the headspace or if I'm not in the best place physically to do my job? So I think that has allowed me this week to be like, I'm not feeling good. I won't be really serving anyone well because I'm not feeling good. It's okay to take a pause and take that time off, even though I'm fighting with my old self and trying because my old self would just want me to settle to just continue working, continuing burn myself in the ground just for the corporate life and like machine so I don't lose my job. But then I have to fight those fears and the uncertainties of being like, no, I have rights. I am sick. No one else would be expected to do this. It's okay. So I feel like there's been a teeter totter on that balance of settling and accepting. And I think I've experienced that a lot this week with everything that has been happening. I've been grieving like my past self and trying to figure out my future self and how I can best support. So it's given me a lot to think about this episode.
Yeah, I feel like these episodes are very therapeutic for us, and give us a lot of introspection in their own way.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I hear you so much in terms of what your job, like what you mean about your job and that idea of settling or accepting. And for me, I work in the camping industry. Children are abound. And children are the greatest lie detectors. They know when you're BSing. They know when you're not feeling well. They know when you're going through the motions. And for me, I have to look introspectively, and it's like if I am gonna settle for not being healthy, I'm not going to be able to provide the experience that they need to be able to have this wonderful time, or I'm not going to be able to help my staff be able to achieve what they want to achieve. So I also need to understand that as well and accept that, not every day is going to be perfect, but I am going to acknowledge when I'm not feeling well and still trying to take care of myself while also helping others, but also giving myself the ability to accept, or it's the idea of acceptance of me not feeling well, but also knowing that I need to not settle for just like this complacency or just going through the motions, because that's not going to help anyone, not only just me, but
Mm-hmm.
all the people around me.
Yeah, and I feel like that part for me is somewhat difficult because I know you've mentioned before that you work hybrid, but I work fully remote. So there's been times where I have not been feeling well that I'm like, I'm just gonna take work to bed with me, which is such a bad habit. People, please don't do this. I really hope you guys have like a different office space because I now have a different office space and my laptop stays in there. But whenever I feel sick, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna bring my laptop to bed with me so if I get the energy, I'm going to do work. Today was like the final day that was like, you know what? I'm taking the day off. if I feel great and miraculous, yes, I'll go back to my laptop and do some work. But I didn't. And I feel like in remote life, it's very easy for us to just settle of being like, oh, I'm not really too sick. Like I can just like I work from home. I can just have a light day with meetings. Oh, I can still do this. It's still working. That's why I've been having the most difficult to let go and to accept and to grieve that just because you work from home does not mean you work all the time from home. It does not mean bring your laptop to bed when you're sick and just things like that. And I thought I've been doing really good with the boundaries and figuring out what works well for me. But this week, I realized that I'm very stubborn and I want to work because I like my job and I don't want to lose my job. But then with me taking time off, I struggle to just accept to get better and just do what I need to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my TED talk.
No, but it's an important thing to discuss. Like for I think setting up those boundaries and making sure that you don't fall into those cycles is so valuable. Uh, I know for me, like working at home, I can't be around any other screens. I have my phone off on the like, I only have like the emergency part on. I can't have like a TV. Um, I make sure that like I am holding myself accountable with like the tabs that I have open because I know that I have a tendency to just like go into the spiral where I could just like start slacking off or like, oh, like I can just like watch a show while I'm working. Like I no, I it's not what I can do because I know personally that that doesn't work for me. And I think that's a big part of when we look back onto the big part of the grief and acceptance. We have these self-fulfilling prophecy tendencies that we do in our lives that perpetuate this grief and make us more angry and make us more sad and make us more resentful,
Yes.
and we get stuck in this grief over and over, and it could extend our grieving process even longer, or we'll hit a second thing to grieve when we haven't even overcome haven't processed our first one, and now it's two things that we're grieving, and it's compounding and cascading and snowballing and making everything worse.
Yeah. I've definitely been there with the snowball method. Um and just yeah, being in my thought too much about like the grief and just going back and forth. I think it's definitely important to acknowledge where you're at and what works well for you. Like you and I are very similar when it comes to work. I have to have mostly all distractions away from me. I have a designated office. I have a monitor, which I really love, but I usually only use that when I have like learner meetings or if I'm doing research. But if I'm just doing like outreach or something like that, then I'm over here only having one screen. Like I'm very strategic for like what works well for me and like my space. While my partner, he can have music on, a TV show, and he's over here with like his phone doing calls in the living room. He's just very like go with the flow, flexible. I'm over here being like, how the heck are you getting work done? Like, what? But I've realized we all have different ways that we operate. And just what works well for one person does not mean it works well for someone else.
Yeah. And I think that's something that is really reflective of the entire grieving process. We what helps or what works for me in the grieving process may not work for any someone else or anyone else, and that's okay. I never want it to seem like that my way or the highway type deal. I don't want to be kind of standing up spreading the gospel that because this worked for me, that you just have to follow these steps and the grieving process will be right and over. Because that's just a lie.
Yeah, it's not
And
linear at all. It's
no,
very roller coaster.
Yeah, it's very roller coastery. And yeah, like my techniques that may help, may not help for other people. Sometimes, like for me, it might be a circle and a circle peg. But for other people, that's like instead of a circle peg, it's a square peg. And I
Mhm.
encourage everyone to really look introspectively in terms of what works for them, what techniques, what people, what environment works for them to go through their own grieving process.
Yeah, and sometimes it will take multiple things to attempt to try. I know personally I've done that before. I'm like, okay, great, we're going to try this and see how it works. And then I would reflect on it and put a few thoughts and ideas down. And if I enjoyed doing it, I kept returning to it and kept trying. I know for me that was mostly like self-care with trying to make sure I get like a pedicure or have a massage or do Reiki or do meditation and all these other things that I can incorporate in my life that I have to look forward to. But I know with other people I've talked to and like my friends, that's not what they want to do. It's completely different and that's a-okay. Like you were saying, like it's not a one size fits all, but if some of the suggestions that we provide are helpful, that's great. But everyone has to figure out what works best for them.
Yeah. And that's kind of the beauty of it all as well. If emotions were all black and white and there was one way to solve everything or one way to feel all the time, we'd be a pretty boring species. Life is complicated. It's strange. It's scary. It's amazing. It's fun. It's sad. There's just so many complex emotions and ways to process everything. And it's it's beautiful in a way that we all are able to go through a different process.
For sure.
Yeah. I I think it's one of those things that like in the moment you're not able to really appreciate. Um and I think that's something that in the whole disability journey, like we look back at a lot of moments that were painful or sad, but really looking back, like it helped shape us into the person that we become. It helped make us a stronger person. It helped make us someone that can help other people. And there is a lot of joy that I get, more joy that I've gotten from that experience because of what I've been able to do than the initial pain that I had at that moment.
Yeah. That's so amazing to hear that you can give your perspective. And we also, with this platform and just overall the community, we can help support and be another layer of community and mentor possibly to other people who are experiencing all these things. And life is a roller coaster. So it's basically just get on the ride and you'll enjoy most of it. Some parts there will be some spirals, but at the end of the day, there's always a place to look up and look at the future and not be stuck in the past, but be okay with doing that self work and that discovery to figure out what works best for you with the grieving process and what hasn't worked and why and what you're hoping to do later on because you can always change and that's life. Life changes all the time and we can always start a new habit or start a new thing. It usually takes around 3 to 4 weeks to start a habit. So anything can happen for this new year.
Yeah. I think to extend your roller coaster metaphor a little bit more, the roller coaster that you may be on is one that is not good. It's one that you
Yeah.
feel like you want to vomit and you're sick and you feel terrible and
Mhm.
you hate it and you're just
Mhm.
not happy. But you know, one bad ride in the amusement park doesn't make the entire amusement park bad. There are other
Nope.
places. There's other rides. My personal favorite's the log flume. So you'll
Oh,
find your
yes.
log flume and
Or the swings. I
just
love
wait.
the
Yeah, the
swings.
swings are great too. I yeah, I felt for a while I was on the loop de loop roller coaster. I hate loops. Hate heights in general,
Same,
honestly.
same.
But now I get to go down a fun little waterfall while I'm in a log, and that made me happy. And you'll everyone will find their log flume.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping to find is my log. Right now, I've been in the loop-de-loop and I'm also scared of heights. So I'm hopeful to get off this ride at some point to hop on a more cool, chill, stable, and peaceful log ride instead
Yep.
of the loop-de-loop.
While rides do end in this metaphor, the amusement park does not. Where you're still here,
Mhm.
and we appreciate all of you that come, and that's something too
Yes.
that's important to remember is that you are still here. It may feel hard, and there's a lot of dark places that we could definitely go into, but and especially in that grieving process, but you never have to tackle these alone. There are many resources, many people that are there that love you, that care about you, um, and want you to be able to be the best person that everyone knows that you are. So I guess that's the it does end, and to not give up.
Yeah. Because you never know when that light at the end of the tunnel will happen. Who knows? And maybe when you least expected it. I know for me in the past, that's what happened with getting into this community. So you are not alone. And feel free to always voice your concerns because everyone has a voice and you are important and you are seen. Just find that community of support or try new things to get better support if you feel like there may need to be more support in your life. But also don't be afraid to talk to others, put yourself out there. Sometimes you can surprise yourself by doing so. I know I've had so many experiences that I never thought I would do, and I did it just to try because the worst thing that can happen is someone saying no. And I like the I liked it. Like I like getting to know people more and figuring out that journey. So don't be afraid to try new things and put yourself out there. You matter.
Yeah, man, I knew this topic was gonna be heavy, but I didn't realize just how emotional I would get, or just how deep I would get into it. And thank you honestly for uh allowing both of us to really dive deep into this and really to be able to share this with all of you listening.
Yeah, we really appreciate each and every one of you listening. And I knew the topic was going to be a little bit heavy. I was also very optimistic and happy to be talking about it because the last few weeks there's been a lot of things happening on my end. And I hope with us just sharing some things that we're experiencing or we've experienced can help either one of you all. But like Dan always says, usually at the end of the podcast, if you have any suggestions, comments, please feel free. Also, like and subscribe. It really means the world to us to get to know you a little bit more and figuring out what you guys may be interested in other episodes and how we can best support moving forward.
Yes. We have not decided our topic for episode 4 just yet. We know episode 5 will be filmed in person, because we will be meeting up
Oh,
for Rare Disease Week, which will be awesome.
yes.
Uh, and that one we know the topic for, but we're not gonna say it just yet. But we know the topic for episode 5. Episode 4, we do not know yet. But
To be
if you have any
decided.
ideas, please feel free to comment. We would love to hear any if you have some. But yeah, thank you again, to each and every one of you for all of your support. And yeah, we hope that if you are having similar experiences, that you are able to help or you are able to get the resources that you need, and that you become the best person that everyone knows that you can be. And with that, thank you for sliding into our DMs, and we hope that you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for listening.